Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Sunday. Winter's here. It's very cool. Cool everywhere by the look of the chat. Apart from the US, I think it's a bit warm there. But anyway, last week we finished off box 2, and this is it in front of me here. And I managed to get finished all of the little ones, the little things, the odd things, where I had to sort of put bits and pieces together during the week, and this is what we've come up with in the end. So on the bench here I have, and you all know that when I'm making something, I'm generally making 3 or 4 of them, because there are gluing times and things like that that you can't sort of deal with during a 1 hour show. So I tend to make 3 or 4 or 5 or, you know, whatever. And I've done that with these ones. Now, these are pretty much all the same timber except for this one here. But they all have the same technique. Now, the original box that we started with was this little one here. I'll just set it up here for a second. This was box 1, where we had a lift-off lid, and a recessed panel and sleeves on the inside. So that was box 1. Box 2 was this one here, which is the one with the top recessed into it. It was quite a little task to get that. So if you were watching last week, you would have seen how I got the bits and pieces all set up. So these ones have just been sanded and polished, and they've all got an internal sleeve in them. Now, one of the things that I did, and Pam and I discussed this during the week, was looking at ways of designating the front of the box. Of course, the back of the box is designated by the fact that it's got the hinges visible and a 45-degree cut in it. But the front of the box, we had to do something with it. So we came up with 2 different ideas. One is the little smiley that we put on that one. Quite a simple little task, just a piece of sandpaper on a half-round file is all you need to create that little smile. And this one here is just taking your block plane and taking the chamfer off the top and the bottom, so that it sits there, and you can see it sort of mimics what happens at the back in a smaller version. So basically that was it. But still, we have a similar sort of thing. The boxes are all about the same size, just a different configuration. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to finish off our 3rd box of the series, or series 1. It's just a little secrets box, and the 3rd box is this one here, and it's a raised panel. Pam's given it a little Japanese name. She calls it Ereganto, which I think relates to...
It means elegant.
Means elegant in Japanese.
In Japanese.
Okay. For those of you who read and speak Japanese. So it's raised panel like that. Now, it's not an easy task actually putting that raised panel in there. Now, I could just stick it on top, but we don't do things like that. What I want to do is I want to make sure that when you look on the inside, it's a nice fit on the inside as well. So it gets rebaited into the top panel. Again, it's a lift-off lid. I have got a version that I've hinged. So this is the same box, the same setup, only it's a hinge lid. There's a reason why I've got that hinge there. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But we're going to go with this version here, where we're just going to put that in there, because just keep it as simple as we can anyway, even though it is a difficult task to do this. We're just going to keep it as simple as we can, so that you guys can have a go at it and get some success pretty much straight away. So excuse me, so that's what we're going to do. So I'll get rid of this and then we'll get started. You'll have to excuse me walking across in front of the camera. Okay, so this is what we have. We built all these in the first program. We built all the boxes. We just did frameworks, and as you can see, we've changed them a little bit. Now, in the process of building all of the boxes, one of the things that I did, I'll just pull this apart. This one is just a really nice fit. One of the things that I did was we cut, let's put this back together for you. We cut a rebate 10 millimeters up from the bottom so that we had room to put a base in and still have plenty of support for the bottom panel. Now, the top and bottom panels on this particular type of box are exactly the same size. So when you cut them, you need to make sure that the top panel and the bottom panel are exactly the same size. Now, I've made these 10 millimeter thick top panel, 4 millimeter bottom panel. I've rounded over the edges. You'll have seen in the previous boxes, I rounded over all the edges of the bases and the tops all in one go. So I was sort of just doing a whole lot of things all at once. This one here is a little bit more difficult. Basically because what we want is we want a square top on it. So I can't actually round over the top panel. But I have to round over the bottom panel because we're going to cut a trench into that piece as well. So bear with it, and I'll show you how we go about that. So that's the one I'm going to cut the top off.
So what you're saying is that the top panel of the box has two faces, two different shapes.
Exactly, it has two different shapes and we have to work around getting them to fit. The important thing to remember is these have to be exactly the same size, those two parts. Now, cutting the trench. The trench will be dependent on how much of a raised panel you want here. You can see on this one I've got about 1.5 millimeters, so it's not very much. Whereas on this one here we've got 3 millimeters. It's quite high. So I'm going to stick to the 3 mil. I find this a more pleasing visual effect. So we're going to stick to that. So what I have to do is, instead of setting the rebate cutter to 10 millimeters, I'm going to set it to 7 millimeters. That means that the trench is going to be closer to the top. So let's get that started. Our rebate cutter, for those of you who haven't seen them before, cuts a 5 millimeter trench. 4 millimeter trench, 5 millimeters deep. And you may find quite a lot of the processes that we do here are basically revision from parts before. It's just those little variants that we have with the lids and the hinging and so forth. So I'm just reducing my depth of cut down to 1.5 millimeters by adding that big bearing. And then I'm going to set the top of my tooth, of the tooth, to 7 mil. So if I set my LARK tool to 7 mil, so then I can adjust my router down to that 7 mil. Now what that will mean, I need a pointing stick, that will mean what's going to happen is the top of the router bit will cut at 7 millimeters in, so it'll cut there, and then we'll have 4 millimeters of depth of cut. Okay, so from there to there will be 4 millimeters. I don't know if you can see that on my thing, and then we'll have 3 millimeters left over. So that's our 7 millimeters. That with a 10 millimeter piece of material, it's going to have 3 millimeters exposed above the top edge. So that's the important thing to remember. Now you can expose that more, add a thicker piece of material, add a thinner piece of material. You can adjust it any which way you like. That's how I like to do it. So that's what we're going to do. Now, normal process that we use is safety first. Wrap some tape around the box to hold it together. Now all the other boxes I did the whole lot all at once because they all had the same setup when it came to fitting the panel. Whereas this one's just a little bit different. Sometimes that change of visual effect has a significant effect on what the box actually looks like or what it comes out like, and it builds, doing these little things like this, these are only small boxes, it actually builds your skill level, and everybody wants to get better at what they do. So having a go at it, it doesn't take a lot of timber to actually make this little box. If you damage it, you can make the decision whether you keep it or throw it away. It's up to you. So ears on, and we'll cut the trench. So I started the trench with a small cut. Okay, so it's not very deep, it's only 1.5 mm deep. It's enough to start it. It actually gives you, you'll see, excuse me, you'll notice it probably went backwards. Well, I always climb route when I'm cutting that first part. It actually gives you a cleaner edges to your trench. And now it's just a matter of making sure we go the right way. And there's my trench. So what I need to do now is build the piece of material that's going to go into that trench. Now this will necessitate building different little jigs and things like that. So like I said, it's totally a different process to what we normally do. So you saw where Pam came in close, that we're only 7 mm down. Our piece of material is going to be 10 mm, that means it's 3 mm above the thing. So we have to cut a rebate 3 mm high, 4 mm up from the bottom. So that's basically the maths behind what we're doing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the rebate, the slot cutter. That's a 3.2 mm slot cutter. That will do exactly what we want it to do. So I'm having difficulty getting my words right today, so
Just make
Lots
up a
of different
few.
things. I'll make up a couple, but yeah.
I can help you there. I'm good at making up words.
Yes. All right. So let's get on to this one. You can see I've got my big fence out. I always like to make sure that most of this router bit, it's quite a big router bit, you can see most of it's covered at the right time. Now our piece of material is 10 millimeters thick. What we have to do is we have to cut ourselves something that has a trench in it already. Yeah, I've already made one because I've got a few of the boxes already done. And this is my little tester. It's a 10 millimeter piece of material with the right size trench in it. All right. And so when I'm testing it, I'll fit it into there. Now let me pull this apart.
That's a good idea, so we can get a closer look.
It may seem like a bit of a fiddle, but it does, if you saw the boxes, you'll see that they are quite nice. So what we want to do is here, we want to make a piece of material that fits in there like that. Now what we're looking for when we do this is to make sure that the bottom part of the trench, this section here, fits neatly into the trench. The top part sits nice and neat, and there's no gap at the top edge. Also, we don't want too much of a gap here. We want a little bit of space there because the thing's going to expand and contract, and we want that to happen. So that's what has to happen. That's what we're going to make. So I'm going to make one of these. I would normally just use that. I've got top tester written on it.
And so that's what the top of the box is going to look.
So that's what the top of the box will look like. We've got to round over that edge first, but this is the tester thing, and we use that to adjust the height of our router bit. So I'll just run the router bit up and down. So I just want to show you how to make one of these to start with. So the easiest way to do it is to cut yourself a piece of material. Make sure that both pieces are the same size. Like the top part, the top of your box is the same size as your piece of panel. It's no good having a thinner piece because then you don't have the slot in the right place. So you can do this quite easily. Drop that down.
Oh, I see.
If I sit that on there, got to unlock it.
I'm going to move the fence out of the way for a moment because it's really hard to see.
Right, so all I've done is set it up like that. Right.
Okay.
It's not going to work that way. That's basically what we have to do, is we have to cut a rebate for this to fit in. I'm just going to rethink what I just said. Like I said, thinking through the words that I have to use. If that's going to go in there, what I need to do is I need to have that 4 millimeters up from the bottom. So I set my LARK tool. Actually, I won't use the LARK tool for that. I'll use a ruler. So this is to the bottom of the cutting tooth. Set that at 4 millimeters. That way the bottom edge will be what fits into the trench. Okay, so that'll fit in there like that. send this out of the way so I don't damage any of it. That bit, then I want this bit. This is just a push block, so now I need to pull this across. And the depth, at this point I'm going to set at 5mm. You can do it smaller if you like. If you do it 5mm, that means that there's a bit of room there for things to expand and contract. The dust extraction. Good. Okay, so that's not quite going to work. So what I'll do is I'll dock that off. I've got to drop it down a tiny little bit. It just doesn't quite fit in there enough. It does fit in, but not enough. But you can see it's going to fit quite nicely once I drop it down. Just a tiny little bit, and then I've got the exposed top 3mm. Drop that down a tiny little bit. Check. Just do the other end. Now that's a perfect fit. The other thing that we're looking for here is to make sure that we're not right up against the bottom of the trench. You can see there's a tiny little 0.5mm gap in there, and we want to be able to see that, or we want that to happen. So I've got my depth right and I've got my height right. So now it's a matter of working my piece of material. Now, I built the trench.
Okay, look.
Okay, Fanny's doing her little dance around the dust extractor again. What I've done is I've built the jig that I need to set my adjustment. So that was the process that I had to do. Now we've got to go through the process of actually building the lid. So if you haven't cut the material already yet, then cut your piece of material to the right size and then go through this process. I'm going to take this off and I'm going to change the round a bit because there's a process that we need to do before we go much further. I'm going to reset it in a second. And this is a good way of actually testing to see that you've got everything right, is to pull it apart and put it back together again and see if it works. Now, you don't have to. I could have done this earlier and I could have done this beforehand, but I wanted to show you how to make that little jig
High risk, Cole. High risk.
High risk. High risk. Okay, so when you have a look at the little box, you'll see that the top edge is rounded over. That's the first thing you have to do. Okay, choose the top of the piece of timber or the top of the box. You'll notice on this one here they're pretty much all straight lines. This one's got a little bit of grain showing on that side. It's quarter sawn along here. This one is pretty much grain all around the place. So which one do you prefer, Pammy, on the top?
Oh, flip it over again. They're both
6
lovely.
of one, half dozen of the other?
Yeah, they're both lovely.
So you look for what's going to happen and what's going to be the nicest, and we'll just round over the edge. So I'm just adjusting it just down a little bit. Don't actually want a step in there. The router bit that I'm using here is the 504. Like I said to you before, we don't normally carry this, but we can get it very quickly for you if you wish to purchase one. We normally sell the 506 quarter-inch round over. Okay, so all I'm going to do there is I'm just going to round over the edges. I'm going to go along the end grain first, just in case I have a little tear out on here, and I'll clean it up and then we'll get around and we'll do it the right way up. So here's on, everybody. And this is the process of actually building this lid. It takes the sharpness off the edge of the box, off the edge of the lid. You can do a bigger round over, or you can just chamfer it if you like. Just there are many ways of actually making that look quite nice. It's just we're using that process. Okay, now I need to cut the trench in it. So we go back to our original. And this is where we work our magic that we did before. So, got to make sure I'm using the right one.
Can't see anything there. Make sure you're using the right end.
Right
Test cut.
Yep. Just want to make sure I've got that pretty right.
It's all about micro adjustments, isn't it?
It certainly is. I haven't got it right yet. Going the wrong way. That's better. There we go. So that's the litmus test, guys. Let's see if this is going to work here. So, bring the dust extractor in. 90 degrees. So we can go straight into the round bit, bring the fence to the router bit, and we have our depth. Okay, so that little jig is actually a handy little piece of kit. So something you can sort of keep for later. So if you want to do a few of those boxes, by all means, that's the way to go. Now, when I do this, I'm going to make sure that I've got it upside down sorry, got it the right way. Have it the right way up so that our 3mm is at the top and our 4mm at the bottom. I think that's what we need to do. I'm just checking it. So what's going to happen here is we're going to cut the trench at the top edge, right? So that has to sit up like that. And we have a little push block. And I'll cut along the end grain first and then we'll go around the box.
You ready?
Right, it is on, yep. So Pammy's going to do her little dust extractor dance again. So there's our rounded over top, and this is what's going to fit into the rebate that we cut in the top edge of the box. Now the problem here is we need to have rounded over corners here and here, which need to match up to this piece here. And this is why that piece and that piece have to be identical. Because when you know this one fits, because you fitted it into the box earlier, and you've got to make sure that that fits, and then we have to round over the corners on this one. So, rounding over the corners on this to keep the square edge at the top edge, again, we need to make another little jig. Now, when I round those over, I'm going to do it on the router. I'm not going to use my radius jig, which is what I used for doing the bottom. We're going to do it on the router table. And if you've got a flush trim router bit that's very, very small, then by all means use it. But I'm just going to leave that there for the moment. Take the router bit out. When I round my corners over here, I'm going to use the straight cutter from my jig. So we're using the H10 kit, so therefore we use H10 straight bit. Now there's another reason why I use the straight bit, the H10 rather than the A10. And the reason, there's a couple of reasons. Number one, it's not very tall. Number two, the gap between the edge of the cutting tooth and the outside edge of the bearing is a whole lot smaller than the A10. The A10 has a bigger space between the bearing and the edge of the cutting tool. So this one's probably a better choice because that one there, it won't take enough material off to be able to allow it to sit into the corner. So that's the reasoning behind that.
It's a chubby little cutter, isn't it? But it packs a punch.
Chubby little cutter that does a lot of work. Okay, we'll just get that out of the way so that we can do the rest of the process. Now what it has to do is it has to cut around this corner, right? Now, just putting that on there, it's not going to work. We have to make a jig to do that. Now, a simple jig, and this is one that you've probably seen me make before, is a piece of MDF, just an offcut, and I've rounded over one of the corners with the radius jig on the sander, and I want to match that. So if I sit my piece of timber on that. And it's important that this is square as well as that. So if I make them flush like this, I'm going to put a piece of timber here. Now it sticks out the end and there's a reason for that. And I get my nail gun.
Well, heavy artillery.
A little bit of persuasive stuff. If you find that keeps moving on you, it's a good idea to put a clamp on it to hold it in place. And it needs to be flush. Both ways. I'll get a little clamp and put it on there. Just making sure that's perfectly flush. I'm going to clamp it to the bench. That way it's not going to go anywhere. Just check. Everything is nice. A little piece of material here. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to put 2 nails in. So ears on. And another piece here. Ears on. Put that out of the way because I'll probably need that again in a second. Okay, so that means I can now round over this corner. And if my piece of timber is perfectly square, and it may not be, you may be using a piece that's rectangular, when you turn it around it may not be flush, and this is not flush, so something has to change. Flush here but not there. Right, so this is a little bit more rectangle because maybe the box is rectangle or something like that, but I can do this corner and I can do this corner, so the 2 opposites, just by doing this. Okay, so I'm going to change things in a sec, and the reason I've got these stuck out here is because then I can rip them off and replace them if I need to. So now it's a matter of setting the router bit to the right height, and I want the router bit to come up so that the bearing is running on my template, but I also want the top of the cutter to be in the trench, not touching the top edge. So that's going to be pretty good. Okay, so ears on. So that's just a clever little way of doing it so that we get the bottom part of it is going to be round, and it's just a matter of going around and doing a lot now. So sit that back in there. Actually, that is very flush. I don't need to change anything. If your piece of timber is rectangular, what you can do is just tear those up and just reset so that you do the other 2 opposite corners. Now when you do this one here, you've got to be really careful because the grain runs along this way and you're going to be starting to cut going across the grain this way, which may give you a little bit of tear out there. So just be very careful and take out very small amounts, not very much at all. You don't want to damage anything. So he's on. So just a little bit of sanding there, just to tidy it up. It's going to be recessed into the trench, so it's not a critical point. It's just I like to get the furry stuff out of there, so there's nothing jammed in there that's going to upset the fit. And there you have it. Now, the next thing is to fit the whole lot together. Now, normally I would just glue that together. Where's my bits? Here we go. Normally I'd just glue that together, but this one here I need to sand the inside of that and make sure that's sanded before I do, but this will give you the idea of what's going to happen. So that now fits in there, and you can see, once I get that in, when you put this together the first time, make sure the bottom is not in there. That way, if it's a bit tight, you can get it apart. Okay, so now I have that fitting in there. And you'll see I've actually got some movement that I can adjust, and it fits in really nicely. And when you look in the bottom of the box, you can see in the box it's got a really nice fit in there, so that it looks quite neat. So then we turn it over and have a look, and beautiful. That's fitted in there. Now when I put these together, what I try to do, you can see, just pull that apart, you can see the grain goes up the box this way. Now because my piece of timber is exactly the same square, what I want is the grain to follow around over the box. So put it in the other way, it goes in that way. Together, so now I have the grain starting at the bottom of the box. It goes all the way across the top over to the other side. Now that wouldn't occur if all the material is all the same around the box, which is what I've done with the other boxes. With a box like this is exactly the same. The grain starts at the bottom of the box and goes all the way across to the top of the box. And where we have a box that has the colour of the timber is all the same around the sides, it really doesn't matter, so long as that matches up to that. so that both the grain is running that way. So they're just little things that give you a box that little professionalism that people look for when they're looking for something to purchase. So anyway, that will get glued together. I've got to sand the inside of that panel before I actually glue that together. And once it's glued together, this is what we end up with. So very simple little jig. It's not hard to make. You don't have to keep them if you don't want to. But my next task now is to cut the top off of this. So let me get rid of this dust extractor. And the fence. Don't need the fence anymore. Now from here on out, it's the revision of the processes that we use. For those of you who haven't seen this before, the revision of the processes that we use to take the top off the box. But we have to be quite careful here. I'm going to use TSRW5, which is this 4mm spiral bit. I don't think that's in right. Let's see what happened there. Now I showed you this box here before. I'm going to get it back because it's significant. This is the early version of this little Japanese box that we started making for. We started making them for a gallery. The gallery has since closed, but they were the only people that ever got that little box, and that's why I've sort of added it into here, because now it's going to be a public little box. Now, when we did it, I didn't think about what would happen on the inside of the box. Originally we used to have the sleeves in there, but the problem was that there was not enough material at the top here, on this edge here, to actually put sleeves in, or to have them fit so that they actually hung onto the lid when you pick the box up. One of the gallery members that I had them with actually picked the box up and the bottom of it fell off because they grabbed the lid and there wasn't enough material there to actually hold it together. So I've had to rethink how I made this box, and what I've done, this is the other version of it. I've added an extra 5mm to the depth of the lid, and that using the same technique, using the same dovetail system, I've had to lift it. You have a look at the difference in the size of the box. This one here is a lot shorter than that one. I've had to make it a bit wider, a bit longer, and give myself a bit more room to actually fit sleeves in so that the lid actually stayed in place. Where you cut the top off doesn't really matter. If you cut the top off close to this joint or close to that joint, doesn't matter, because when you put the box together you can't actually see the joint. All you can see is the fact that all of these joints are the same size, and that's what we're looking for. That's the process. That's something that nobody notices that until such time it's not right. So if you make it right, you've got it. People are going to go, oh gee, lovely box. So what I've done is I'm going to cut my top off 15mm below the top. The reason for that is I've got 10mm of lost a little bit off my microphone. There's 10 millimeters of material here, right? So that comes down to about here, or 7 millimeters from there, and we want a little bit of material underneath it, so 5 mil. So if I set my router, my LARK tool at 15 mil, the bottom of the box is, the bottom of the lid comes down to here, and that gives me plenty of material underneath to actually fit bring that up here. And what I'll be doing is I'll be cutting 4 millimeters out of there, so this is what's going to be removed. So I've got plenty of material there underneath the top edge, or the bottom of the top, so that I can fit the sleeves in properly. Just something that we had to look at when we did it. Now when I do the cut, again, half the thickness, for those of you who haven't seen this process before. We'll need a fence. Going to use my short fence, a little easier for Pam to come to the video from. Bottom edge of the cutter, so I turn the cutter around so it's 90 degrees to my fence. It's the bottom edge. Bring my fence over, and we'll lock that in place. Okay, ears on everybody. Oh, incidentally, before you actually cut the top off, make sure you sand all your joints off. Good idea. Ears on everybody. So what I have there now is I have a parallel cut all the way around the box. You can do this on a table saw, you can do it on a bandsaw. I like to do it here because I'm sitting at the table already. Raise my router bit up. And we're just going to take 3 cuts through there. So ears on again. Now, there's no support there, so we need to put our sleeve in. So I have a sleeve that's the same thickness as my cut. All I'm doing is replacing the material I just took out. You could cut it off with a tenon saw, but then you're going to do a fair bit of work to get it flat again. Scissors. Okay, final cut. There we have our box with the two parts. So now I just want to check sand the two parts. Put that out of the way. So a little board with some 240 on it.
Would you use anything finer than that?
Yeah, I generally start with 240 because it's been a fairly rough cut. You'll notice I turn it around as I work with it. Just checking, I've got a little mark here that I need to remove. And a little one there, so it's just a matter of keep turning it around because we're all either right or left hand dominant, and usually it's the dominant hand that does all the work. And so I have a nice surface there, just match it up with this one. Just checking. A little bit more there. That's nice. Now, what I'm going to do is I'll take that off there and I'm going to use a piece of 400. So make a few of these up before you start. Just making sure I've got rid of all the scratches. That's really nice. Just do the bottom as well. Just the feet, make sure they're all perfect. Turn the box over. And when you put those together, you can see that the fit is going to be sublime. Okay, so that's the box before you start doing your fitting, your fit out. Now, one of the things that you need to be careful of in the box, you can see here, and I know a lot of people put a piece of tape in there when they glue things together. I generally don't do it, but you can see there's a little bit of glue in here. And it's only a tiny little bit. So I've got a bit over here as well. So I just very carefully, with the edge of a sharp chisel, just take out that little bit of glue. you can't actually get at it when you glue the box together, and that's why I say when we when we glue the box together, we only put small amounts of glue in, and this is where the fact that your jointing, or the use of the jig, if you've got it set up correctly, you don't need a lot of glue. I've just overdone it a little bit here. Just want to peel that out of there.
What glue do you normally use, Col?
The glue that I use is Tite Bond 3. The reason I use that is because it's waterproof. It takes a few minutes to set up, and that gives you time to adjust the box to make sure that the box is actually square, so you've got plenty of time to do that. So it's just a matter of cleaning that out of there. It's important that you do that, because when you try to fit your sleeves, they're going to interfere with the sleeve. Okay, the next step is to make the internal bits. Now you could leave the box like that. You can make sleeves to fit in there with the box like that, so that you can see the actual colour of the timber in the bottom of the box. You could put a piece of leather in there. I see people who are putting in, they're doing things like flocking. They're gluing pieces of material to the base and all that. I tend to sort of shy away from that, because when you can see that's quite grubby. So if I want to get it in and get it out, my sleeves will be removable, like so. I can actually peel my piece of material off, and I can go and clean that. If I decide I don't like it, I can throw it away, and I can have the bottom of a box showing. Or if I want to change the colour, I've already got the base of it sitting there ready to go, so I can use it for various ways of doing it. So I'm going to show you how to make one of those. So over to my table saw, my drop saw. I do this to nearly all of the boxes that I make. Incidentally, if you wish to purchase one of those boxes, was that a blatant advertisement or what?
It is.
If you wish to purchase one of these boxes, contact us through our email. If you have somebody special who you wish to give one to, you can purchase one. If I don't have any, if you're too slow and you don't get in time, I will make you one. Just got to make sure this fits in. Not a good idea to drop that in there while you're cutting. Best way is that way. So take up the edge of there. Here's my little piece of sandpaper that I had. There it is. Sand off the edges.
So on the on the topic of the glues, Cole, what glue do you use to glue in the barrel hinges?
To glue in barrel hinges, I generally use araldite. Actually, if I've got a barrel hinge here, I will show you. When you look at the barrel hinges, I'll sit that on here so you can see it. That's the 4mm one. Okay, they're quite small. You'll see that on here there's a couple of little ribs. There's one there, there's one there, and there's a couple up on this end as well. Damaged fingernail there. So those little ribs there, if you stick super glue in there, super glue runs in there and it doesn't actually do anything, whereas araldite creates like a resin that actually sits in those little rebates and then soaks into the timber on the inside of the hole.
Oh, come on, I can't get it to...
Can't see it?
Yeah, I can't get it to focus when I try to come in. Yeah, lost cause today.
Lost cause for that, but that's the explanation. Always use araldite. Okay. Just want to get a piece of blue. And I always choose the grubby, sort of the not so good side, to stick my piece of baize to. Incidentally, we sell this baize if you wish to purchase some. I sell it in 1 metre lengths. You can get it off our website.
Half and 1 metre.
Oh, half metre as well, yeah. Or if you want a 2 metre length, happy to sell you one. Bit more organised today. I've got everything sitting at hand. Okay, now I want to put a tag on that. I'm going to put that back where I found it so that I can get it out. You'll notice when I pull it out of the other box, I had a little flap on it, and this is one of those little flaps. You can buy this stuff from a good haberdashery. Spotlight.
For one.
There's one.
Yeah.
Okay. Good idea not to stick your finger onto that. A little bit of glue there. A little bit of tape. I've lost my scissors. I'll put the tape on there just to bind it in, and I don't ever take it off. There isn't any need to take it off, in my opinion. You can if you wish. It just helps it sit in place. Just want to wipe that excess off there. And then we have a nice little fitting base. Now I have some leftover sleeves that I had and I think they're all going to fit. That one fits in there. That one fits in there. These were left over from the other ones. I just need to shorten these ones a little bit. Got stuff everywhere. Guess that way. Okay. Now I have to take a little bit off of this one to get it to fit. It's not going to fit, so on my shooting board,
Not there yet?
not quite. A little bit more off. Okay. Get another one. I know this one's got to take a little bit off both ends. Just have to shorten the smallest little amount. Whoop. Not quite. Got a very clean cut on the end of that. A little bit more. So I'm not taking very much off at all here. Okay, that's going to fit in there. I'm not going to put it in there just at the moment. I'm just going to cut them to size. Pencil. So I want about 5mm at the top edge. So if I cut them off, say there, cut them all exactly the same, that will give me the right height. Now I've got a little bit of damage on the top edge of this one here, which is what I can, and that's what I can take off. So, set up my board. The damaged edge. Just going to dock those off. Lovely. This one's off. I'm actually going to dress off the end of one of these ones. Doesn't want to play the game properly. Bit. Now it's just a matter of fiddling around until you get that the right size and the right fit. It's still not going to play the game for me. A little bit more off. Oh, here we go.
Beautiful.
There's your little box. Right, now it's 20 past 10. I'm going to stay for a couple more minutes, so for those of you who have to rush off, I hope you've got something out of it. But I want to talk about some finishes. Now, so that I can finish off this series of boxes and we can go on to the next one for next week. The thing that I've been doing is I've been doing a bit of experimenting with some finishes. Now, the Chinese wood oil that the Constantia Chinese wood oil is the one that I've used most of the time. This is the result that you get when you use the wood oil. It's a beautiful finish. It looks spectacular. One of the things that somebody said to me during the week is that it sends the material really golden. It tends to sort of enrich the colours, and you can see that when you look at the difference between that and the colours of the box where it's got the Chinese wood oil on it. Now I find that stunning finish. It's just such a nice finish to use. But somebody said to me, I would rather keep the whiteness of the coachwood and have a lighter shade of walnut. This is the same box, but what I've done with this one here is I've just used the wax. I haven't put any oil on it. I haven't put a sealer or anything like that on it. I've just used the wax. Now the wax will always it'll fill the grain, but it's something you have to keep working at to make it look quite nice all of the time. You've got to keep at it. You can polish it up and make it look pretty. Now all of our other boxes that we've made, they've all had coats of the Chinese wood oil and then waxed over the top of it, and basically as a sort of a sealant. All I've done this time is just not use the Chinese wood oil. Now finishing is all about taste. What do you like? What sort of things do you want to do with the boxes? It's up to you to have a little play with it and just see what sort of finishes you get. This has just got wax on it. You can see the difference between this hewn pine and this hewn pine is not a lot of difference, just putting wax on hewn pine. So you'll find that some of the timbers actually have very little effect by having either or whatever you want to do. Some do. These two, you can see that the coachwood on that and the coachwood on there are completely different colours. When you look at the difference in the grain, when you look at the difference of the colour of the timber, Chinese wood oil, Constantia wax. So they're both very, very good products. I find them really good. And this is the same here. I've used Chinese wood oil on this one here, and the only thing that makes this one look darker is the fact that the rose mahogany on the top of it is darker, whereas this one here, the Chinese wood oil looks quite nice, but there's not a lot of difference between the wax and that on that timber. You can experiment with them just to give you some various different types of finishes, different looks to your finish, different effects, and people around you are going to go, I like that one better than that one, and you can take it from there. So anyhow, that's that's the rub with the finishing. So next week what we're going to do is we're going to start with, we're going to be making, we'll make a smaller one of these, make one of these with a pinned hinge lid. So we're going to do that. So the series is going to be uneven sided boxes. You can see that the front and the sides, they're two different sizes. So uneven sided with the mini jig, that's going to be the start. And we're also going to be using the butterfly function of the jig, and we're going to be making a box similar to this size, and we're going to be putting the butterflies in it. So the jig itself was all designed around use of the butterfly kit, and so we get to use it next week. Uneven sided box, we'll be using 9mm material, so relatively thick, but anyway we'll go from there, and we'll have different hinging techniques. So this hinging technique and this hinging technique again is another setup that you may find interesting. So by all means join us next week, and we will we'll endeavour to give you some more, hopefully, wonderful information that you can use in your workshop. So if you enjoyed what you saw today, didn't have any errors today, which is really, really good. So if you've enjoyed what you're watching today, by all means subscribe if you haven't subscribed. All of our shows are all on live on our channel. They're date ordered, and they're all got different colour for each of the projects. So series 2 next week starts, and we'll take it from there, and there will be a third series with a different type of box again after the uneven sided box. So 2 different techniques and so forth. So
thanks
have a good week, everybody.
Thanks
Thank you for watching, and I will see you all next week. Oh, don't forget, if you wish to purchase a box, advertise.
Get off.